If you are here, you have taken an active role in bettering your life, no matter what stage of life you are in. The Banyan Treatment Center's podcast will discuss many topics like recovery, addiction, self-help, mental health, and so much more. It will provide you with tools to succeed, ideas for recovering, and how-tos on creating a better life. My name is Alyssa, and today's episode is about being a father in recovery. Today in our panel, we have Fatih Penda, a father of three, recovery advocate, and industry leader. Thank you so much for joining us today, Fatih.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Being a parent is a difficult task, but being a father in recovery can be even more challenging. Fathers in early recovery often struggle to balance their recovery and parenting responsibilities while also dealing with the stigma and shame associated with addiction. In this episode, we will be discussing the unique challenges faced by fathers in recovery and how they can use their experience to help their children understand and accept it in the future. Today, we'll be hearing from Fatih, a father in long-term recovery, who will share his story of resilience and courage in overcoming his addiction. Our goal is to provide hope and support to any father struggling with addiction or finding a healthy recovery parenting balance and to help them find a path to a healthier, more positive future. So first things first, tell us about your family.
It's a full-time job. So I have, the first time actually the other day, I introduced my stepson as my son. Mm-hmm. So I have my son who's 13, and then I have my daughter who's 4, and then I have my middle child who's 5. And then we have 3 dogs, and I have my wife and me. So we have a full house.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Of chaos.
So have you been sober since becoming a father? You have, correct? You were already in recovery.
Yes. Not long, but yes.
Okay. Well, you said it was 2 years, right?
17 months or so.
Okay.
Almost 2 years.
Okay. And for those that, 2 years might seem like a lot, but for someone with long-term recovery, we can tell you that 2 years, you're still getting the hang of it.
Yeah. I'll still get my feet under me.
Yes. So when did you get sober, you said? How long have you been in recovery officially for?
May 1st, 2015 was the last time I used.
Okay. Talk to us about the progression of your addiction. Like, when did it start? How did it get worse?
Okay. So it started, I would say, one thing that I always pick up on when I share my story in like AA and stuff is I was drinking in like that. Like a lot of people say, oh, I was doing this and that. And when I was 12, I don't, it wasn't by choice almost, but like I think around 12, I really was being given alcohol at like house parties or different events where our parents were, because our parents would want to stay out and have fun, and they would kind of feed us to quiet us in the back. And I think that that's when it kind of started, because I remember, I always share this and I'm always repeated the way I share it because it's what I remember. We would have like a group room of cousins in the back of a pizza store, for example, and like they wouldn't like the way Rucka tastes, which is like ouzo. It's a liquor. Okay. And when they wouldn't drink it, I would take it. And I didn't like the way it smelled or tasted because it's like black licorice. But I would plug my nose and I would drink it because I liked the way it made me feel. Mm-hmm. So to me, like that's a standout part of my story, because it was what I liked, how it made me feel, not that I enjoyed the taste of it. And I think like as time went on, because I was introduced to it and I kind of knew what it did to make you feel that way, I think I was comfortable trying other things too, you know, and getting into other things. The progression probably started in my 15, 16 years of age, I'd say. It was more drinking and smoking weed and taking acid and mushrooms into like the Oxycontins were coming out in 97. It was getting into that. It was from snorting coke when I was 18 to smoking crack in Lawrence, Mass by the time I was 19. Yeah. So, and then I had tasted everything on the menu and I would just pick and choose on the day depending what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like in my age 19. 19,
that's when you started doing the really hard stuff.
Before that, but I didn't consider snorting coke when I was 17 in high school hard. Right. I considered smoking it in a drug dealer's house or someone else's house in Lawrence. Like that was hard to me when I was 19.
Right. Yeah, that's when you identify that you had really lost that self-control and addiction really was taking the forefront of the reasoning you were using these substances.
I think I could say even 18, because I was doing some Oxycontins and I realized that when I woke up, if I didn't use an Oxy, like the OC, the real original ones, I was sneezing, my nose was running, I was running to the bathroom because I couldn't hold my bowel movement.
Yeah.
So to me, it was like, I really need this.
Yeah.
So like then I remember I had an alarm clock next to my bed, and the battery part, I would always have an 80 or 2 hidden in there, whatever I could afford. And in the morning I would know I had that, and I would just, crush up a little bit, snort it, swallow a little quarter piece or a half, and then kind of just get up. And 30 minutes later, I would literally be watching the clock and say, all right, now it's kicked in. I can get up and start moving. So I think that's when I kind of knew I was dependent on opiates at
Right.
18.
So what was your rock bottom, or what started the path to recovery?
Oof. It's crazy because like I've had a lot of rock bottoms, but I think I just got tired, Alyssa. Like I just got to the point of like, I was 34. I was living in Georgia. I was engaged planning a wedding that I had no clue that I wasn't ready for. I was just doing things, just going in the motions, kind of like, this is what you're supposed to do. Like, this is the American dream. You get married, house, kids, yada, yada, yada. But I don't think I knew that like what the path I was headed in. And I think, at that point, I was kind of like, I'm in Atlanta going to like the Bluff in different areas with a revolver that has electric tape around the handle. Just in case I have to use it, I could rip off the electrical tape and still keep the gun. Wow. And I could dump the gun somewhere else later on or whatever. I was going into places that had like metal trash barrels with fire and rusty horseshoes out back in the middle of the winter to cop drugs. And there was like landlords to these abandoned houses, but they were just like homeless crackheads that kind of held the fort down, and you would go in there and you break them off a little bit of your drugs, and they'd let you hang out all day. I think about it and I'm like, that was kind of the near of rock bottom, but then I was found overdosed. So my ex-wife let me in the house, and I was in her bathtub, and I was overdosing in the bathtub. She got in the bathroom, and I had like a mirror with like crack on it, dope on it, benzos right there, and a little pill bottle next to it, just everything. Cause I used to use in the bathroom a lot. So when she let me back in the house, I told her I needed to shower, lock myself in the bathroom, laid out the rest of my drugs, and just kept getting high. I was just happy to be back. And then she found me overdosed, and I was like bubbling under the water in the tub. Cause I still had water. I said I was taking a bath. And after that, I came to Florida, and actually I went to Banyan in Pompano as a client. When I was done doing my inpatient little thing, I was in the IOP, intensive outpatient halfway house, and a group of guys went to a meeting and they didn't invite me. So I figured, I'll show you guys. I went in all their rooms and I opened their drawers to where they kept their meds. At the time, this was how it was. And I found their gabapentins. And I found one kid's sheet and I popped out all his 800 milligram gabapentin. And I had like 30 of them in my pocket. And I went back to my apartment because I was pissed at these kids that they didn't bring me to the meeting with them. And I just kept taking these gabapentins every 20 or 30 minutes. And before you knew it, I had lost like motor skills, and like someone had seen me trying to go to a meeting, and I was walking, trying to open up random car doors in Pompano, and they called, staff, and they came, and I just remember it was like the Wolf of Wall Street. I couldn't even talk or walk or anything, and I got Baker acted. And when I woke up, I was in a hospital down here in a Baker Act unit, and there was a guy, and he was on my right, and the way he was eating his cereal was like he was taking it, and as he was bringing it to his mouth, he would go to his left shoulder and dump it on his shoulder and chew. But all the cereal was just dripping down his shoulder, and he was chewing air. And I was like, man, I'm back in the crazy ward, because I've been there before in Turkey. So I'm like, I'm back in the mental ward. They think I'm crazy, right? And the nurse came in and started yelling at him about using Dilaudid and look at you and blah, blah, blah. And then I realized, shit, I must have overdosed. And they brought me to the hospital. And I think that's kind of when I was like, I got to get my shit together, because that guy next to me is going to be me.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the final straw, I think.
You just woke up there. You didn't even really recall why you were there.
No. I didn't know why I was there. I didn't have anybody's phone number to call. I didn't have anything on me. I tried to leave, and I seen a lady saying like, hey, we might have an AMA, like, and they were all getting antsy on walkie-talkies. And I was like, it kind of brought back that like, oh shit, like 13 years ago when I was in like a crazy hospital in Turkey. Because when you overdose over there, they don't know substance. They just think you're crazy. They put you in a ward.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that. And I was like, I'm going to get a Thorazine shot and strap down to a bed. And it kind of scared me.
Yeah. So how did all of this affect your relationship with your family?
I know like that they still stutter step around some topics because they're nervous about, oh my God, we don't want them to relapse. Or, even though I'm coming up on 8 years clean, I think they still are a little nervous about like bringing up certain topics. And I think I get like babied on certain situations where they want to tell me stuff, but they don't, or they want to say something to my face, but they don't. It's almost good because it's like a shield of like, don't F with me.
Yeah.
But it's almost like you guys can, I'm not going to just go relapse because of what you said. I've been through a lot,
Right.
So it's weird. But I think, it separated a lot of some of the stuff that we all had in together and bonded. But I think it's good. It's just a new me, and they're just having to learn who the new me is.
Right. Yeah,
So
everybody's
different.
journey is different with that.
Very
Some
different.
family members come back quickly, some don't come back at all.
I got mine back. Thank God, knock on wood. I got mine back, but they're having a hard time understanding who the new me is, I think.
Yeah. You hit your rock bottom. Now you're on the path to recovery. So when did you meet your wife and, become a father? When did this new part of life begin for you?
So I was 9 months sober, and I was working out, and my wife, she had been working at that gym, and I met her there. Kind of like started talking one day, and she didn't let me leave the gym. She was just talking to me at the front desk, according to what I remember. And I kind of gave her like a business card. I used like one of my little pickup tactics with her that came out of left field. It was cool, but it was like more natural. So I met her when I was 9 months sober, even though I knew it was still early.
Yeah.
Everything felt right. Mm-hmm. After that, we started talking religiously and dating. And when I was 17 months cleaner, so we found out she was pregnant. Mm-hmm. Our journey was already going. We started building a family. We started to, look at moving out west a little bit because of the family.
So what challenges do you think you experienced being a dad in earlier recovery? Like, was it difficult to kind of balance the recovery life and the parenting life? Because I imagine that, going to meetings every day probably isn't a reality, when you have young children in the home.
Yeah. I think early on I was nervous because the challenges I faced were, am I truly, you're never going to truly be recovered, but am I like truly ready for this task?
Right.
As far as like you said, am I going to be able to get to meetings? Which I had to bring him sometimes. And then I started to look at it and go, shit, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want my kids to grow up in the rooms of AA. Like, that's not what I'm trying to do. It's, it was like this weird area. You know what I mean? Like, he was still in a little baby car chair thing. So it didn't matter. But there was times where, let's just leave that recovery stuff aside. Like, there's the mental, there's the physical, there's the spirituality thing that I try to do every day. So like going to the gym was a huge challenge, Alyssa. I couldn't get to the gym, and my wife was working a little bit too. So like now she's working, and I'm home with the kid, and I'm working, and she's home and there was this alternating schedule. There were times where we had resistant bands and we'd tie them, and I went to LA Fitness and City Place, and they knew us, so I could go downstairs in the cycle room that was empty. And my wife showed me the trick. You just kind of tie it around the handle and the resistant band. And I would just pull it and rock them to sleep. And I'd bring dumbbells down there, and I'd just be on the bike and do a little bit of dumbbell work and stuff. But like, I think the biggest challenge was like not being able to get the 100% physical part of my recovery in, because it's not always the, let's get to a meeting and stuff and let's sponsor guys. Cause I was doing a lot of that stuff, which was getting more and more challenging because I felt, selfish when I was taking away time from my family.
Yeah.
But the gym part was very challenging because I'm like, go to the gym takes 15 minutes to get there, 15 minutes to get back, and you're there for an hour. It's an hour and a half, 2 hours. So I felt kind of like this is selfish too, but sometimes I bring my son, sometimes I need it. I found that being challenging. And then like work trips and stuff, because like I would travel and like that would really break my heart, is like missing something. So, the first time he was like eating or some ice cream, I wasn't there. Like those little things I still kind of remember. But for the most part, I think it was, I would say mostly my biggest challenges were like, just trying to get to the gym to get that physical part of. And obviously my prayer routine got messed up. You wake up in the morning, baby's crying, needs this or that. You're trying to help. It's, those little things really got affected. But we got through it.
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about too, because when you're a parent, every minute of every day counts.
Yeah.
And it's like, what am I giving it to? What am I taking it away from?
Yep.
And somebody in early recovery, like, sometimes it happens, you find yourself in this situation, but, it's so important to make sure that you're like mentally sound and prepared, because if you're not, unfortunately, this could cause too much stress and people relapse.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And that's a scary thing.
Yep.
You know, you want to bring a child into this world. You want to make sure that you're there for that child at all costs. And there's too many times, too many stories of people having children, losing their lives. It breaks my heart for the amount of people or children out there that don't have parents anymore.
Yeah, I've seen that way too much too. Well, that's another thing is like that I think, you know, that I wanted to touch on with that is, so people ask me, I don't know if it's if it's an upcoming question up, but I think about like, are you going to tell your kid about recovery? Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's one of my biggest fears is I want to share some of the stuff, but I don't want to share. Like, I want him to know daddy doesn't drink, but I don't know when I want to tell him it's because when daddy drinks, he gets crazy. You know, like daddy's been shot and been to prison and all this stuff. I don't want to tell him all that crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But I want to, I guess it's crazy. It's instilled to teach with fear. I don't want to do that either. But I almost want to scare him like, holy shit. But I want them to look at it and be like admirable. Like, look what my dad overcame.
Yeah.
And like, we can't get away with anything because dad's done that. So that's a part of like the thing I think about a lot with like being a dad in recovery. Like, when do you like, because now I'm looking for the addictive behaviors that they sometimes carry. Like, oh my God, my son's acting just like an addict. You know, me and my wife will even say, she's like, he's got the addict in him. Look at what he's doing or whatever, you know? And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, it's starting to get spooky where I'm like, when do I start? You know, obviously not now, but my other son is 13. I got to start talking to him. And he actually just got Instagram. And I did another podcast and he said, oh, I didn't know T does podcasts. And he watched the podcast. I'm talking about getting shot by the cops, going to prison, this, that, the other. So I'm like, well, there's no hiding it from him anymore. But I'm not ready to have the talk with him yet. He's not in high school. I'm waiting till he goes to high school next year. And then I'll take him out for a coffee and, you know, get him a little vanilla bean colada and talk to him a little bit about that stuff.
It's so funny that you bring that up because the internet really brings some parenting challenges when it comes to being anonymous with your children. I'll never forget the day that my stepson just decided he wanted to start Googling our names, you know, and we're like, stop, don't Google it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You're not allowed to Google our names. We don't want any mugshots popping up.
No more
okay?
Googling, yeah.
I think that there's a time and place. And at the end of the day, they recognize it and they know it, especially if you have a child in two households, right? Like one household, they drink wine at dinner or they do this and they do that. And then at this other household, there's no alcoholic beverages. All the friends that come over that are the same age, they don't drink either, you know?
They'll pick up on it.
Yeah, they start to pick up on things, you know, the older they get. But no, it is important to kind of introduce them to it slowly. And you're right. We get an opportunity to show them like you can overcome so much, you know? And I always kind of say this, it's like possessing a stranger's memories, because when you are that recovered person and you think about some of the crazy stuff that you've been involved with in the past, you're like, I don't even know who that person was. Yeah. Like, that's crazy. That's not me, you know? But yeah, doing podcasts and whatnot. And the internet.
Yeah. Well, him getting Instagram and whatnot, I'm still going to do these.
So do you think going through everything that you've gone through in your past has changed your perspective on parenting at all? Like, do you bring a different mindset into being the parent that you are today?
So I think so. I definitely do. I don't think that anyone has the instruction manual on how to be a parent. I think all our parents, trial and error, some with a lot of support, some with no support. It has helped me as far as open my eyes to certain things. I coach my kids' teams, like, you know, and the harsh reality is like my parents had to work a lot. So they didn't have time to even come to my games, forget coaching my teams.
Yeah.
So like we're very flexible, thank God, with the jobs we have where I'm able to coach them and I'm able to be present. I don't get to go to all their karate classes, but when my wife lets me know they're getting a stripe or something, I show up. When my daughter requests that I come to her gymnastics at 2:30 in the afternoon, I pull up. So like I'm there, and like those things, you know, I do the simple things like kick the soccer ball with my son out front when he wants to, go to the fields with my daughter, you know, and play, you know, whatever she wants to do, gymnastics or whatever it is. Like these little things, I think it helps me because I look for some of the things that maybe I would have appreciated more. Mm-hmm. So then I can give that back to them, you know? Yeah. That's kind of one of the things I noticed is give them as much of the things you wanted that you didn't get. And maybe I'm lacking in other areas. I don't know. I'm trying.
No, I love that. And I mean, I say this pretty often, but it's like a really amazing thing being a person in recovery because we're taught and like it's ingrained in our brains to be a better person every day. And we're constantly working on ourselves, especially once the drugs and alcohol aren't an issue anymore, right? Like, okay, we know we've put that aside. That's not like an obsessive thought that we have anymore. How do we continue to be better? How am I going to be a
Yeah.
better person
That's
next
honestly,
year?
that's the best. You just nailed it.
Yep. And like other people don't think like that.
No.
You know?
You know, I'm gonna stay on this and give one more thing. What my wife said to me once that always sticks to me. It's been years now, where I used to do this thing where I used to think I was doing good, and I would take my son and go to the park. I'd have the Bluetooth in, locked into the phone, doing emails, doing work. And when I'm not doing work, I'm looking at social media, right? We're addicted to this Facebook and this, that, and the other, right? So my son's just running around. So the park was my babysitter. And then one time my wife was like, oh, what'd you do with the kid? I went to the park. She's like, yeah, but weren't you on the phone the whole time? You said you were. I was like, yeah. She's like, so what'd you do with the kids? I'm asking. I'm like, I just told you I went to the park. She's like, no, you were working at the park. I said, you're right. She said, did you like engage, get on your hands and knees and play with them and roll around? Like, I'm like, no. And then I went to the park without it, like left the phone in the car, right? And I saw my kids, like, Daddy play tag with me. We're running around playing tag, jumping up and down, playing hide and seek. And it was a total different experience than when I was on my phone, hoping they would just engage with other kids and flee off and let me do my thing. So it's like, and then I started to, realize that too, is like, how can I be better when I have that quality time with my kids? Is it really quality or not? So, it helps me. Like you said, it's the perfect way. How can I be better? I'm always looking to be better. So it was like that helped me be better to my kids.
Yeah. I'm sure they appreciated it so much.
I hope.
And it's such a cool thing to be able to live life again through your kids' eyes,
I know. It is awesome.
That's like the best part about being a parent.
Their smiles are the best. Yeah. It's the best.
And you get to relive things that would be too immature for an adult to enjoy. And you get to say that it's for your kids, but really it's for you. So what advice would you give to a father struggling with addiction or maybe just navigating fatherhood and early recovery?
I guess like struggling with addiction, I always say this to myself. That's why I would say it to them. It's not even like a leverage tool. It's just like, I'm always like, shit, man, you have kids. Like, what are you doing? Like, and then I talk about like, you can die. Like your kids can grow up without a dad.
Yeah.
And then find out one day that their dad chose drugs over them. So like, if you're struggling in addiction as a parent that knows a little bit about recovery, you got to reach out. The phone weighs 1,000,000 pounds, but all right, I'll go to this story. About a year and a half ago, I had open heart surgery. And I knew that when I had open heart surgery, I was going to get, meds. Mm-hmm. I didn't know they were going to give me Dilaudid in the hospital. I'd never done Dilaudid. I found my newfound love with 6 years sober. Her name was Dilaudid. I'm in the hospital getting a Dilaudid drip. It was crazy. The obsession was released. The demons were out. I was sitting in the hospital counting the time. When's my 4-hour window up? She's going to come back to give me another Dilaudid in my IV. I tell her to wash it with the thing to make sure she's like, it's flowing, that everything's fine. I'm like, just push the thing through because I want to feel that before I feel that. Like the sickness was there.
Yeah, immediately.
12 o'clock. 11 o'clock, my wife, where are you? Are you coming with the yogurt parfait and the Snickers? I'm sitting in the chair like 3 days in the ICU. Like I shouldn't even be standing. I'm sitting down waiting for the sweets, the nurse, everything's lined up the way I want it. The TV's on. So like to me, I had already prematurely known something like this was going to happen. I was going to meetings, raising my hands. But when I was in the hospital, this happened. Then I went home and I had a prescription for Percocet 30s, which is like another thing that I used to do. So now I'm at home and I did what was the hardest thing was I just kept telling on myself. I told my wife, hide these pills. She would hide them. I tell her, like, you hid them behind, like, I know where they are. Can you go hide the pills? She's like, why are you looking for them? I'm like, because I'm an addict and the demons, I'm trying to bury them again, please. And I would call people and tell them. And then I would go to meetings and raise my hand and like talk about it. And like, so like to what I would tell someone is like, if you don't talk about it, then you're not going to find any help or any solution. But the more I found I talked about it, the more men annoyed me and called me and asked how I was doing and asked if I wanted to go to a meeting. And I was like, just leave me alone. But like, how could I be left alone if I was telling on myself?
Yeah.
And eventually I just caved into the guy. Like I was like, all right, let's go, and I was like, listen, this is what I'm doing. I'm still asking the doctor to fill in. Why don't you grab a pen and paper and do some step work? And then when I started to do that, and then I started looking more at my kids and going, they're about to see a real dark side of daddy. And I think just a mixture of all that got me back on the right track. So like, if I had any advice, it would be get to an all men's meeting or gender specific meeting. It's easier to raise your hand and get honest there. Have men come up to you after the meeting, talk to them, exchange numbers. And just, if you have kids, take a deep look at your kids, because if you love your kids enough, that should be enough of a reason to say, I need to battle these demons.
Yeah. What about somebody who's in early recovery or just in recovery that's a new parent?
I would say make sure you don't take on just being a dad full time without the recovery part. Yeah. Even if there's a small percentage of that, there's a lot of Zoom meetings. I do Zoom meetings now. I don't really even show up anymore. I just show up on Zoom. I do my Zoom meetings, raise my hand and stuff like that. So if you're caught up with work, being a father, you're like, I don't know how Fatih's even doing, like what he's saying, there's no time in the day. Like you said, we calculate all our time. We're calculated now. So, what I would do is I would say, utilize Zoom. Do something small, even if it's picking up the phone and calling 3 different people a day to do check-ins or whatever. Do some prayer, do something physical, and be a dad. I mean, be there for your kid. But if you ever have any downtime, don't sit back and watch Netflix. Mm-hmm. Go to a meeting or go get a good gym session in or go get with God in God's house somewhere. Do something, because if you're not proactive, you'll be in a lot of trouble.
Yep. Do you have anything else you want to add?
That it's possible, that recovery is possible, and that being a father in recovery is possible, that, being a husband, because, that's another part we forget, is being a husband in recovery is possible. Being a good man to your wife as best as you can, staying the lines of integrity, all that stuff it's very possible. I know it's hard, but like nothing easy. Nothing good comes easy. You have to work hard. Sometimes people will say like, oh man, I admire your life. Or I look at it, I'm like, how do you do it? And it's like, dude, I'll tell you, it's fucking hard. I'm exhausted. And most times I don't even talk about it. I just bury it. But you know what? I look back and I say, that's why not everybody does it, Fatih. And that gasses me up to do it again the next day. Because I'm like, that's why not everybody does it. Because it is hard and it's not easy. And every day in and day out, it takes so much different work and challenges. But keep doing it, keep being honest, and that's it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for having your open and honest conversation with everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Well, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Remember that growth and recovery are possible, and it can all start today. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Banyan Treatment Centers, and make sure you're subscribing for notifications of new episodes. And please don't forget to leave us a review. If you or someone you know are struggling, call us today at 888-515-7706. Thanks for joining us today on the Banyan Podcast.